Hey there, if you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to leave a review and to follow or subscribe. Don't forget to share with anybody that you think might be interested. Your support is greatly appreciated. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful, and it's the best way for us to reach more people and grow this wonderful community. Thanks again for listening. This is the Stop Time Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Hopkins, and I'm here to engage you in thought-provoking, motivational conversations around practicing the art of living in the moment. I'm a certified life coach, and I'm excited to dig deep and offer insights into embracing who we are and where we are at. So my next guest is a true powerhouse in the world of storytelling and theater. A Pulitzer Prize finalist and Tony-nominated musical librettist, he has left an indelible mark on Broadway and beyond. His musical Hell's Kitchen, co-written with Alicia Keys, has taken Broadway by storm, earning 13 Tony Award nominations and continuing its acclaimed run at the historic Shubert Theater. His play, The Elaborate Entrance of Chad Deity, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Drama and has been produced over 30 times across the nation. Not only a celebrated playwright, he is also a gifted screenwriter, having adapted the iconic musical Rent for Fox, contributed to Netflix hit series Glow, and developed pilots for HBO and FX. As an educator, he shares his expertise at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and serves on the boards of New Dramatists and the Dramatists Guild. Please join me in welcoming Christopher Diaz. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Let me just get a little context. Where are you right now, and what's the rhythm of your life these days?
I'm in my office at New York University, and I'm going to teach right after we finish this. The rhythm of my life, this year, this semester, there actually is a little bit of a rhythm. I teach twice a week. I'm home with my wife and my kids and our dog for 3 days a week, and then the weekends tend to be busier than everything else. But I'm teaching, I'm writing a little bit, and taking a bunch of meetings, keeping an eye on what's going on in Hell's Kitchen. So, there's a bunch of things going on.
Yeah, no kidding. And are you someone that likes to have some kind of like a rhythm? Like it sounds like the teaching at least gives you some parameters that are kind of defined.
Yeah, you kind of have to have some kind of rhythm. I mean, it was before I was married, and definitely before I had kids, I was a little bit more of a like fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. So the writing career, especially the career of a playwright, was really catch as catch can kind of thing. You don't really control your own time. You would write when the writing sort of came to you. You'd go work on a show when they paid you to go work on a show. And now there's a little bit more rhythm, having a steady day job and having a production that's running. So, and kids is the most important thing. Kids, you get shape when they're around.
Yep. You got to have it, right? You got to model it, and you've got to sort of, figure it out. Absolutely. That's how old are your kids?
I have a 12-year-old and a just turned 9-year-old.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Yeah.
Boys, girls?
Thank you. Both boys.
Nice. When in that form that I sent you, I asked you, what, if anything, do you think stands between you and who you want to be? And you shared with me, I think 18-year-old me would be pretty excited about what we've become. So first of all, hell yes. So let's just take a minute to celebrate you, because we go so fast sometimes. So I just want to honor you and celebrate you. I mean, that's a great acknowledgement with self, right?
I think so. I mean, I hope so. I mean, it was funny. I wasn't expecting the questionnaire when I answered, and it was nice to sort of live in the moment to just sort of answer questions. And I was talking to my students about this the other day, and that kind of a realization that like I've been able to work in the theater my whole life. My whole entire adult life has been working, doing, if not exactly the thing that I wanted to do, things that are directly related to the things that I wanted to do. And I still enjoy it, and I still get to go see a lot of theater, and I get to be around, creative people. So it's hard to pass that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're speaking my language, because I talk all the time with my clients about I get to. You're talking about I get to with choice, with gratitude. You chose to do it, right? But you're aware of it.
Absolutely.
And you're grateful for it. And that is just a massive energetic shift compared to I have to do this, or even I want to do this, but I get to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's still a lot of it that's still I have to do this, and there's a lot of it that's still sort of like a pain, and things that I don't want to do, and I'm dealing with spreadsheets right now before I was meeting with you, and populating a spreadsheet manually that really I should be able to figure out how to do in an automated kind of way, and it doesn't feel like the most efficient use of my time, but yeah, it's I'm the fundamental guts of what I'm working on is stuff that I want to be working on, and that's so rare.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great acknowledgement. I absolutely love that. What's one thing that you know now that maybe you would have liked that 18-year-old, Chris that you're celebrating with now or acknowledging? What's one thing that he might have wanted to know maybe that you know now?
I think, this all takes a very long time. Like every part of the process of my career takes a long time. I figuring out not so much figuring out that I wanted to write, that was an early on thing, but understanding what it looks like to have a career doing this and to understand that, playwriting especially, there's not really a path towards supporting oneself just as a playwright. So there's no like specific path to like settling in the way that you can get a job and have a 401k and and health insurance and all that kind of stuff. It takes a while to find other parts of your life that can provide that kind of security and stability. And at the same time, in playwriting, it's not easy to just write a play. That takes forever. And then once you've written the play, to get it produced takes forever, and to find the right actors and the right director and build a career. It's a long, slow process. And I kind of thought when I was young, when I got out of graduate school, I had a little bit of success right away, with the thesis play, but that I wrote. But even having some success in that field, in that area with that play, I couldn't get that play produced for another almost 10 years. And it's weird saying, I was developing the play, I was making my way around theater companies, and people sort of knew my work, but I had a really hard time sort of establishing an actual professional career. So I think I would have warned myself a little bit better, at 18, and especially in my 20s when I got out of graduate school, 21, 22, that like this is going to take forever. And it's almost, it took me into my 40s to really feel like, this had landed as a career, not just as a thing that I kind of like to do.
Or both, right?
Or both. Yeah, it is both. But in terms of like the thing that I have to show up and turn something in, and there's deliverables, and
Mhm.
and the thing that's going to provide some like, economic peace of mind, like that stuff takes a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's cool though that you're at that realization now as we live in the moment together of no, I am doing it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and I've been doing it. I'm not hearing you say, "Oh my God, I had to struggle," and I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't a struggle, but you weren't,
Yeah, yeah.
were you ever a waiter, for instance?
I was a like a cater waiter for I think 2 days. I think I did it 2 days when I was 17 or 18. And that was not for me. I've been a teacher, as a day job for all my adult career. But yeah, it's always I think every job that I've had since I was maybe 18 or 19 has been either theater related or teaching related.
Yeah.
Um, and and I like teaching a lot. So yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like some of those years when I was teaching as a day job, I made $12,000 for the whole year. So it
Yep.
was there were years when it was rough, but I've always been lucky that going to work is going to do something that I really, 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 really love.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And we need teachers, so thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, a lot of people don't like to teach, and we need teachers. We need teachers teaching other things than what I teach too. I teach, I teach,
Yeah.
I teach playwriting and sort of theater appreciation kind of stuff to a
Nice.
bunch of different folks, and I have so much admiration for quote unquote real teachers.
So speaking of this long, things taking a long time. So you began your
Mhm.
collaboration with Alicia Keys on Hell's Kitchen like what, 12 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, it was 13 years, almost exactly 13 years from when we opened off Broadway, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk me through it. How did you get involved in that? How did that come up for you?
It's one of those really lucky. I'm very lucky, and a lot of a lot of the big things that happened in my career, people ask how it happened, and it's like, well, I'm sort of, I got lucky. She had a really clear idea about what she wanted to do in terms of bringing some of her music to the stage to create a musical inspired loosely by not her whole life, but by things that happened to her when she was a kid. She was 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And she knew roughly the story that she wanted to tell, or really more specifically, the time in her life that she wanted to look at and pull a story from. And she, as far as I know, went to the folks at William Morris. I think it was William Morris at that time, now William Morris Endeavor, my agency, I think her agency, and just started asking around, were there people that she could meet who were playwrights or musical theater writers who might be able to help shape a piece. And I think she met with 3 or 4 writers. I don't know who those writers are. And I met with her. She brought me in. I had just come off not too long. It was not too long after we had done Chad Deity, sort of at the tail end of that play, shortly after we were in LA. I was doing what one does when you're a playwright who's had like a play that's been well received, and that's take meetings with folks in other fields. It's you take some playwriting meetings, but like film and TV start coming calling, and musicals start coming calling. And I had grown up wanting to do musicals. I got into theater primarily through musicals, but I had never written one. And they set up a meeting for us. And usually at that point, they give you a call or they send you an email, and they're like, "Would you like to meet with this person? Would you like to meet with this person?" And my agent's email actually was, "We are setting a meeting for you with Alicia Keys." And I was like, yeah, you are. You should. And I met her, and it was this really intimidating room to walk into because it was her and her A&R person and a producer, and like sitting around this big table. And for whatever reason, it didn't feel as intimidating as it maybe should have. And I didn't try to sell her on the musical that I was going to write. I just connected with her on things that felt familiar and common from her work and from what I knew about her. We bonded over the same kind of music that we listened to. We talked a little bit about growing up in the 90s, and growing up in the New York City area, and we hit it off. And then we had another couple meetings, and I went to go see one of her concerts, and then shortly after that concert that I saw of hers at the Beacon, then a few weeks later, we got the call and we just started working.
Very cool. It stands out to me that you said you felt intimidated, and intimidation is a really interesting thing. I'm just curious to dive in there with, in terms of, that's something sometimes that we project on ourselves, right?
Hmm.
Usually when there's something very important at stake, right? So it sounds like probably, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to infer, but probably, or this was something that you were really, really excited about. And by being in that room, the intimidation factor wasn't necessarily coming from the other people, but rather by the stakes. Is that what I'm hearing? Or talk to me a little bit about that.
It's Yeah, it's both. I mean, like, it was an artist who I had grown up with, not grown up with. I always say grown up with, but I'm older than her, and I was already, out of, I think I was in graduate school um when her first album, Fallen, her first song, Fallen, hit. But she's been in my life, feels like in my life forever. That music is just so iconic. And I had just sort of started to have success artistically, and just sort of growing into what I was as an artist at that point. And you're going in, anytime you're going in to sell yourself in a meeting like that, um, there's the stakes of like, oh, if this works out, it could mean a lot of money. It could mean a trip to Broadway. It could mean all those kinds of things, which were all goals that I sort of, had. But more importantly, it's like you have to go in and you feel like you're trying to justify yourself, or like defend your qualifications for something. And that part of it is really hard. Art always feels like a reflection of yourself. Even when, people criticize what you're doing, they criticize the work, it feels like they're criticizing who you are as a human. And so I think that intimidation was built a little bit around that. But then the other side of it was, you walking into a room with just what felt like a lot of fancy people. And I don't come from money. I don't come from fancy people. Where my parents are Puerto Rican, they're New Yorkers, they're from New York City, but they're come, our families all come from Puerto Rico. And my dad was a phone man originally. He used to work for Ma Bell back in the day, and he climbed the poles and did all the wiring of um, the landline phone connections. My mom was a purchasing manager she became a purchasing manager, but she worked in a hospital and did all the business transactions for the hospital. So, working class folks, and I come from a family that has a lot of folks in the armed forces and some folks in law enforcement and working class jobs and those kinds of things. And here I was, out of graduate school, first of all, first one of my family to go to graduate school. Um, in a weird like wine cellar in Soho, trying to justify why I should be the person to take on this crazy project. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Looking back now, did you know, like, did you know intuitively that you were the right one, but that the sort of barrier was how am I going to show that?
You know, kinda. There's not a lot of people in the theater, as far as I know, who do the same things that I do. I'm just a different, I'm of a different generation. Like all the things that I just said, there's not a lot of us. There's a few of us who were sort of like, New Eurekan, grew up around in or around New York City, in the hip hop era. And, I grew up playing sports and just different sort of vibe of sort of who we are. Um, I didn't know a lot of writers who were interested in musical theater who also knew Alicia's music the way that I did. So I think there was a part of me that felt like I would be a good match for it. I had never written a musical at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of it was a challenge. And that part of it you're trying to justify or trying to make yourself feel comfortable with. But once we met, I will say I felt pretty confident. I didn't know who else was up for it, and they could have wanted to go in the direction of getting somebody with a lot of musical theater experience
Yeah.
and not worry about the other kind of stuff. But she is, and this stayed true all the way through the process. Whenever we hired new folks, it was really about people who understood what we were doing, who understood the vibe, who understood our references and the music that we were interested in, and what it meant to be from New York, what it meant to be this young person and growing up at this time period. So I think pretty early on, it felt to me like, like we were a match. I don't know if I was the only one, but it felt right. It felt right pretty quick.
It sounds like there was a quick community developed there, right? Amongst with the
Yeah, we hit it
audience.
off. We
Yeah.
just the two of us hit it off real fast. And again, like I said, there were probably 6 or 7 people sitting around that table, and I don't remember any of the other people
Mm.
who were sitting around the table at that point, which is, that's unusual. But I think we got to a place pretty quick
Yeah.
where the primary conversation was just me and her, and that's that bond has stayed, for 13 years now.
Well, it's cool too because you had something else in common, which was neither of you had done a musical.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
neat.
Yeah, and we
You
were
know?
both fans, and we were both fans of the same kind of stuff. She grew up in the city, and she did the same thing that I did, which is she went with her mom to the TKTS line, and they just waited and didn't know what they were going to see, and they saw whatever they got cheap tickets to that day. We did the exact same thing, me and my
Yeah.
mom, and and what we ended up seeing were a lot of the same shows, and both of us saw Rent at an early age, and both of us were like, oh, okay, that's
Mm.
where we potentially can fit into this space. And then, cut to however many years after that, we ended up hiring Michael Greif to come on and be our director, and it all kind of came full circle.
So what was the process like at the beginning? Did you jump in right away? Was it just the two of you? Talk to me a little bit about that. It's super interesting.
Yeah, the first few years of it were Alicia, me, and a woman named Susan Lewis, who at that point was working with Alicia's company, AK Worldwide. And we were just talking. We just talked a lot about what we wanted to look like, what we wanted, the story to be about. She came in with some really clear ideas about, she wanted it to be about where she grew up in these buildings called Manhattan Plaza over in Hell's Kitchen. A lot of the folks from Manhattan Plaza have come over and seen the show because we're 2 blocks away from it. We're right around the corner from it. But she wanted to write about growing up in that space and how it became a haven for her to just have art in her body. There's artists, there are visual artists, musicians, and dancers, and actors, and all this stuff. And she wanted to make a story about that. So we jumped in talking a lot about what that felt like, who the characters might be, what the musical influences of those characters might be. That was one of the biggest things we did early on. We identified who each character sort of would feel like musically. And we held to some of that, but it was big guiding principles. But we discovered it was like Nina Simone was a huge part of what we were going to do, and Sammy Davis Jr. in a roundabout way became a big part of what we wanted to do. So we identified those things early on. We worked for 3 or 4 years. We wrote a treatment, wrote our first act of something, and then we hit a point where we were like, we actually don't know how to keep going anymore. We think we have a feeling of this, but doesn't quite feel like a musical. How do we go? So we went back to William Morris and we asked them to help us identify some directors. And when Michael Greif came in, he knew everything that we were missing and knew the kinds of questions we were trying to ask, and helped us actually ask the questions and gave us some answers. And from that point on, it became the 3 of us sort of shaping everything.
Was it an organized kind of work session in the process? Like, are you hanging in cafes and talking? Did you have notes on the wall? I'm always curious about how people work.
Yeah. No, it was hanging wherever she was. I mean, one of the crazy things with working with her is that she's I don't know how many world tours she's done since we started working on this. But we'd get, I'd get bits and pieces. If she was in town, we'd arrange a few hours and I would go hang out in the studio, which is fun. You'd talking to her and then you look over to the trophy case and you're like, oh, I think when we started it was 12 Grammys and now it's I think 16 Grammys up on the wall. 15 or 16. So anyway, so you start hanging out and we would talk and then we went to her house and we went, like, it was just like all these like different places. We went to her house one time and watched Gypsy together and just sort of thinking about like what elements of musicals, elements of that musical we liked and what elements we didn't and what could be useful to us. And then that funnily enough made its way back into the show. The last song that she wrote for the show was a song called 17, sung by Shoshana Bean, and written largely for Shoshana. It was written after Shoshana had come into the mix, and it references Gypsy quite a bit. So we just sort of pieced it together, and we would sit together and I would just ask her questions, whatever I was thinking at this point. What about this character? What was it like? What was it like to be playing piano? Who was teaching you piano? What were the things that sort of jumped out? And then I would try to shape some things together, try to figure out where we were going to put existing songs and what kind of new songs we might need. And we inched together very, very slowly. And then again, when Michael came in, Michael was like, "Great, now it's time to stop inching together and to pull something together that actually like has a beginning, middle, end. And once we have that, then we can figure out what the rest of it needs to be."
I love that. I was going to ask you, it's funny you said the inching. I was just about to ask you, how was the momentum for you, right? Because you're a very motivated person, I don't want to project, but you strike me as somebody who, if you got something in front of you, you're going to do it and you're going to do it wholeheartedly. And this was, but you're dealing with someone, as you said, that, is going to be pulled out all the time for various things. Was there ever a moment where you felt frustrated by the momentum or the inching?
I mean, you'd always like to be able to just sit down and make it, but the economics of that don't really allow for that. I had to do other things, like there's not a lot of money up front, even in the case of something like this, to provide for for yourself, let alone for your family. The other thing that happened in the middle of all of this is when we first got started, when I got hired, there were 0 children. And then when we're finished now, Alicia has 2 kids and I have 2 kids. So we were having kids, we got started and like it was prime years where our families were beginning. So you have to do other things, but you'd be finding time to make the work around all of that. Another story I tell quite a bit is the song "No One" is one of the songs that Alicia wrote that we knew was going to be in the show. It's one of the 5 or 6 songs that she's written that are just like iconic
Yeah.
in the canon of popular music history. And we knew it was going to be in the show. We didn't know what we were going to do with it. It's a great love song, so we assumed it's going to be a love song. But the challenge with writing a Alicia Keys musical is that you've got 80 love songs that you can
Mm.
put into a musical. And it's not, we knew early on it wasn't going to be just like a love musical. It's going to be about a lot of other stuff. And so trying to think about the ways that we were going to sneak some of these songs into the show, how we are going to repurpose them. And I'm listening to them all the time. And I'm walking around listening to them carrying my kid. And, you do everything you can to try to get them to go to sleep. And so I would sing some of those songs to them. And one of the songs that I sang was "No One." And the lyrics to "No One," the opening lyrics are, "I just want you close where you can stay forever. You can be sure that it'll only get better. You and me together through the days and nights. I don't worry because everything's going to be all right." It's like, it's a lullaby when you sing it to a kid. And you're just like, oh, the love that I have right now for you is similar or greater than the love that you have in those early stages of a relationship. So those were the kinds of decisions that we were able to land on early on in the process. And those kinds of discoveries worked within that, like, not being able to just drive through and execute. It was a little stop and start, but we got to grow. I guess the play got to grow with us and our families. So, you always want to move more quickly, and you always want to be able to get, on stage. But for us, it actually, I think it really helped. And the other thing that happens is that, our cast is very young, and they were not, they were babies, literal babies,
Yeah.
while we were writing. So it's been a beautiful thing for a lot of those folks to, have sort of, it took us a while, but we were waiting for them.
That's amazing. So it's
Mhm.
so multi-layered, right? And things happen when
Yeah.
they're supposed to, right? I think that's incredible. It's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. I was going to say, right? I found something you were talking about, something you said in your about your process. You said it's reframing what writing is. I'm always working on it somehow. The actual sitting
Mhm.
down and doing the writing is only one small part. Well, that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The gestation of it takes a lot of time. You need to just be able to sit in it. It's not just like sitting and typing up something. It's like, oh, how do you get to that place where the words actually come flying out of you? You need you need to let it marinate.
Or just to live, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, literally,
Absolutely.
yeah. It's so interesting. We're always so busy thinking we know there's only one way to do something, and this is how. And sure, you're going to get the result that you expect if you do it the same way. But when you're open
Yeah.
to that, right, to that sort of no, this is you're always writing, right? If you're open,
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
yeah.
have to be. I mean, like, you have to, when I first started writing, I was always frustrated. I would go see something and I'd be like, but what is it about? Like, it's not about, like, it's just like, it sits together nicely and it feels like technically whatever, but I'm like, I just don't care about it. I'm not passionate about it. There was a little bit of like being a little bit, a young, jaded, already jaded. I don't know if jaded is the right word, but, a young person who just, it's like, everything should be the way I want it to be. But part of what I was responding to was that feeling of like looking for something lived in, looking for something that feels actually from someone's guts in some way. And I think the only way you get to that is by living, like you said.
Yeah, 100%. There's a beautiful song in the show, right, that Nuck sings called Gramercy Park.
Hmm.
All about how people look at us and see something different than yeah, they try to be someone else, right? Than what they
Hmm.
actually are in order to please. That's how I interpreted it. And I read somewhere that you remember feeling that way when you were 17. And I'm so curious to know. I mean, I get it, right? At 17, we're trying to navigate the world. We're trying to figure out how we fit in, let alone in this industry, let alone all the multi-layers of things that we're all dealing with as humans. But I'm curious, do you ever feel that way still? Like, do you ever feel that you're sort of manipulating yourself a little bit or shaping yourself a little bit to fit in or to be received in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I have like three or four thoughts. The first thing is that, in terms of that particular, the version of the song that lives in the show, it's even more complicated, I think. I mean, it's that feeling that a lot of us have when we're young and we're trying to identify who we are. One of the really fascinating things to me is when we put that song into the context of this show and into that body of the, the young black man who's singing this is partially about finding himself and creating something, an identity to impress other people, but it's also about protection. It's
Yep.
also about like literal, like people see me and they think that I'm this like thug or gangster or whatever, and I have to navigate that. And I have to navigate the places where actually that toughness and that self-assuredness work in my favor, and the places where it actually puts me at great risk. And that was something that was really important for me to tap into. And I think the thing that we all tap into that is similar is how do we create the persona of who we are and what we want others to think about. I mean, like just today, thinking about like I'm going to sit on a Zoom with somebody, and they're going to see what I'm wearing, and I always my theater. It's a very big conversation for me in a theater, um, milieu. Am I going to wear like the sports coat and look like a college professor, or am I going to wear my Brooklyn Nets hoodie? Like there's a little something, there's a choice to it. I want to be in a different kind of space. So that sense of creating who you are feels really important, and that sense of like trying to figure out what people are going to see, what they're going to bring to the table one way or the other in terms of judging you, assessing you, that kind of thing. And I think we all still do it. I think we still do it, moment to moment. I feel like at this point in my life, I'm almost 50, which is a crazy thing to say. I feel so much more comfortable in who I actually am, and less afraid that somebody's going to look at it, look at me, look at the image I'm presenting and say like, oh, that's not valid, or that person is not enough or whatever. I'm like, oh, this is who I am, and I sort of know who I am. And it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to live that way than the other way.
100%. Um, Easier meaning it brings more ease to your life. It's not so easy to do
Hmm.
because we're so hardwired to protect
Yeah.
ourselves. I mean, think about it, right? I mean, throughout the ages, if we didn't fit in, we'd be thrown out of the tribe and we'd die.
Yeah.
So we're
Absolutely.
naturally going to be sort of navigating, just even on the basic primal level of, ooh,
Yeah.
how can I make them feel good about me? So that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's no way around it, and the other thing, for me, I was probably talking about this when thinking about when I was 17, 18 years old
Mm,
I'm a Puerto Rican kid, grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in a suburb, not exactly a suburb, like it wasn't big houses. I lived in an apartment building. But it wasn't, um, it wasn't a rough and tumble urban experience kind of thing. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, and I would spend time with my cousins in the Bronx, and then I would spend time with my all my Jewish friends in Yonkers, and there was a constant sense of like code switching and a constant sense of like your perception based on who was looking at you, and just it was driven home so clearly for me, that I think about that a lot.
yeah.
Or I thought about it constantly growing up. I think about it a lot less now because it's just sort of I'm of all those things. But yeah, you have to, I think we're all doing that code shifty kind of stuff constantly.
Absolutely. What do you think it was that allowed you to arrive where you are now, where it holds less weight for you?
I mean, today I'm just old, and I'm accomplished. And I don't know if accomplished is right, but I feel settled in my work, and that makes a big difference. Like a lot of it is um I can talk about what I do, and what I do is so interconnected to who I am as a human. Like I feel really comfortable with that kind of stuff. Um, Also, again, like I think when you have a family and you have a community that accepts you, which I've always had community and always had family, but my own family and my own
Mm,
sort of like friends that I've now had, from college. We've been friends for 25 years, and we're people who accept all the weird quirks about you and all that kind of stuff. I just know that it's kind of like road tested. Like it just like it works. It works. And there's still senses when you go to a new space, or when I'm teaching all the time, every 6 months, I get a new group of young people
yep.
that I have to try to not impress is not necessarily the right word, but I have to sell them that on like who I am and that I know what I'm doing. And the fact that I just feel more comfortable in that stuff, I think makes it a lot easier to accept, just
Mm.
just accept who you are, and have a sense that other people are going to accept it too.
Yeah, no, for sure. What What would you say is your definition of living in the moment?
I don't know. I don't know. It's such it's I've never I don't think about it that much, and maybe that's living in the moment. I don't like I know some people like sometimes you get those questions. I don't know if you ask one of these questions, but like that question of like, well, how do you get yourself into that place where you're just concerned about what's in front of you, or you're able to embrace what's in front of you, or you're able to sort of celebrate it. And I'm like, I don't know. It's always been that's never been really um foreign to me. It's just like it sort of lived there. I mean, I will say um a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I started going to a gym out in New Jersey where I live, and the guy who runs the gym is he ends every session. We work out for an hour, and at the end of that session, we all sit down and we lay down and restore our breath, and then we sit up in a circle and we go around the room and we say something that we're grateful for, and it's such a game changer.
Yeah.
Not only doing it for yourself, but being in a space with other people that I don't actually know. Now I know very well. And hearing things that they're grateful for. Because I don't know if that's living in the moment, but it feels like it. It feels like being
Mm.
present with these other folks. And it feels like somehow being, I don't know if it's mindful or intentional, or I don't know. All those words kind of feel related to me somehow.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I feel the same way about gratitude, is that true gratitude can only happen in the moment. I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of guilt associated gratitude where we go, "Oh, I should be
Mm.
woof, God, I dodged that bullet,"
Yeah.
and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, but to
Yeah, but
actually, yeah.
what's the thing that actually comes to your mind when you're asked that question, or what's the thing, what do you actually in that moment, feel strongly for, is great. The other thing I will say about living in the moment again is kids are especially when they're little, they just force you to be in the moment,
Yeah.
and well, I guess when I say it's always been natural to me. It's that they always talk to people. I said this to my kids when they turned like 4 or 5 years old, and I was like, "What do you do if you're playing?" Maybe they were a little older, maybe they're 7 or 8, and I said, "Well, what do you do if you're on a playground with a smaller kid and they pick up a stick and they hold it up to their ear and they pretend it's a phone and they hand it to you? And what do you do?" And my kids were both like, "Oh, I answer the phone. Like I pick up the phone and I start talking on the phone."
Mm.
And I was like, yes, I feel like I've parented you well because you engage with this child. The child is just, it's just so matter of fact when the child does it. And like your job in that situation as being sort of the older person is just like dive in and engage and play with them.
Mm.
They've always known since they were a little bit older, if a kid wants to play with you, you get down on their level
Yeah.
and you give it back to them. So that kind of stuff, again, like I wouldn't think of it outwardly as like um I don't know, intentionality or live in the moment kind of thing, but it feels important. It feels like a way to be present.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm hearing, meet them where they're at, meet
Absolutely.
yourself where you're at, and judgment falls away in that place.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why kids are the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, another response could be, "That's not a phone, you idiot. You're so dumb." Right.
Yeah, I know you totally. Or you play it off, or just like, oh, hi, that's cute, and then like you go back to doing your own thing
Yep.
on your own. It's like, no, great. Like a kid is giving you something earnestly and honestly. Like
Engage.
I think I'm sure there are other people who do it different ways, but for me, it's like, oh,
Mm.
engage. Yeah, be there.
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic example. Thank you for that. I love that. What's the hardest thing you've ever done?
I don't know. There's so many. Yeah, there's so many ways to answer that question. The work stuff. There's lots of hard work stuff. Writing is hard every single time. Writing a new thing is hard always because every new show is completely different than everything you've ever done before. And I don't know any writer who sits down to write something new and doesn't have a moment of like, I I literally don't know how to do this. I literally have forgotten how to write. So writing is hard every single time. It's not really hard. Like in the grand scheme of things, like it
Yeah.
ain't that deep. It doesn't matter. I tell my students like no one cares. Like no one like you try to get free of the fear that like you're going to write something and people are going to judge you, because no one actually, especially in the early stages of writing something, cares if you make something or you don't make something, cares if it's good or if it's bad. Like you just have to get past that. So reality, it's not really that hard.
It's interesting, in my work, I talk a lot about the words we use, right? And you'll understand this as a wordsmith,
Mm.
and the words that we put out into the world, right? So when you say something is hard, your brain's going to bring all the, whatever Christy has found as hard. Or when you say writing is hard or whatever, and I'm curious to know, what if it wasn't? Like, what if the perception wasn't that writing is hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, what would be different for you?
Yeah. No, and I think that what I try to do when I'm teaching is to clear up that space. Once you get going, it actually is very easy. Like once you enter into kind of a flow state, like it comes out and the words come out, and all the best stuff that I've ever written has come just sort of pouring out of me at some point. The build up to it is difficult. And the thing that's difficult, one of the things that is difficult, that's probably less difficult now, is related to what we were talking about earlier, is like that feeling of trying to prove yourself and trying to be like trying to get it correct. And I think it's one of the biggest barriers to folks, especially early on, is trying to say like this has to be perfect, that this draft has to get right there. It's like it's not, it ain't deep. I say a lot, you have to be a writer, you have to care about writing 100% and 0%, like not 50% or not 80%. You have to care about what you write 100%. Otherwise, it doesn't come out. Like it has to be the most important thing to you. You have to be like, I'm trying to work out a problem. I'm trying to tell a story. I'm trying to investigate questions, and I'm obsessed with it. And when I go to sleep, I'm thinking about it to some degree. When I'm taking a shower, I'm thinking about it to some degree. I want to solve the problem. I want to solve the problem. I want to solve the problem. That's how I write. And at the same time, I have to be like, if it's not coming right now, it doesn't matter. If I write something and it's not that good, that's fine. Like let it go. Like I'll send it off to the winds, whatever. Like you have to be able to understand that like writing something doesn't like inherently have value one way or the other. What matters is the work that you put into it and the passion that you have for it. But I think if you only operate in that sense of like, this is important, this is important, this is important, then you have too much pressure on yourself and the stuff doesn't come. And if it doesn't go right, then you're just devastated, which I've had moments like that. But if you're just like, it's fine, it doesn't matter, then I don't think you have. I think it's harder to have sort of the rigor and the practice and the idea of like sometimes you just have to sit down and make the thing. Sometimes you just have to like generate. It's also different when it's your job. I'm showing up, I have a hard deadline, I got to turn something in, we're going into production, and we have to rewrite a new song. There are times when it takes like terror. Like you have to be horrified of what's going to happen if you don't make the thing. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. But it can't be found so foundational to your, to your life or to your sense of self. Otherwise, that's not a way to be a functional human being.
Yeah, and love me a paradox, right? About that the 100% and the 0% is great, and
Yeah.
the idea that that we have thoughts, and then we associate an emotion with that thought, and from there, if we take any action, it's based on the feeling that you have. So
Mm,
that's where the
hmm
whole changing the thought and thinking about
mm,
how you want to feel can elicit
yeah.
a different end.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
You know. So I asked you, what was the hardest thing? What was the easiest thing? What was the easiest thing you ever you ever did?
The easiest thing I ever did, I have no idea. Like I would never think about that. The easiest thing that I've ever done. Becoming a father for me was actually very um it slipped right onto my shoulders. Like it was something I think I had been ready for. Had kids a little bit older, but it just like falling into that idea of like, oh, this is actually who I want to be. And this is like, I enjoy most of it. And I really like my kids. I always say someday they'll hear all these interviews where I talk about how I really like them. And that'll be fun. But in addition to like, just like like, loving my children. Like I enjoy them and I always have.
Yeah.
And that same kind of thing of like, the best, like getting on the floor and playing with the kids has always been really great. So again, like I don't want to say that it's easy to be a father or a parent in any kind of way, but for me, like sliding into that role just felt so natural and
Yeah.
right. And I think back to something we were talking earlier, part of why I feel comfortable in my skin in a different way than I did when I was younger was that this was like something that I had a real affinity for.
I love that.
I bet nobody said that before.
What would you say is your Achilles heel?
So hard. These are so difficult. My Achilles heel.
Wait, and let me stop you for one
Um,
second too.
yeah.
You know what I'm even more interested about than the answers
Hmm.
is where you go to find the answers. Where are you looking now?
Yeah.
Where are you searching for that answer?
Oh, like uh, okay. So there's two things. Like first thing is that I physically have to look away because this is related to my writing process. This is so I'm already pissed off at myself for the pretentiousness of what I'm about to say. But like a lot of times when I think about these things, I either look off to the side or I have to close my eyes because I can actually see like words. So if I'm writing, I have to close my eyes and I actually see the words kind of like
Mm,
come across, they come right here. And I've
mhm,
talked to other writers about this and it's hilarious to name drop, but Lin-Manuel Miranda talked to me about when he freestyle raps and he
mm,
does the same thing. He closes and he's like, there's a list of words over here. And then there's the actual words I'm saying here, and I'm trying to match these words. So anyway, so that's a super
mm.
fun thing. I'm actually looking, I'm actually thinking, but where am I going to answer the question that I don't even remember what the question
I
is
knew you
now?
were going to say
Because
that.
that's what
What's
it
your
is.
what's your Achilles
So
heel?
many
What would you
things.
say?
Oh, my Achilles heel. My Achilles heel. I don't know. I think I can get in my head. That's probably a good answer, right? Based on the fact that I'm in my head very much about this. Like I can I've sometimes been really overthinky um and put sort of pressure on. When I was younger, like third, fourth grade, I was very hard on myself in terms of like there's a right way to do things and you have to excel and you have to all that kind of stuff. And somewhere in that time period, through a bunch of sources, I became more of the like, it's not that deep. You'll figure it out. Let it bounce off your shoulders,
Mm,
and try to lower the I don't know the stakes to some extent. And I that served me very well. But I think to some extent, I still have a little bit of that like, oh, it's going to be all right. I'll figure it out. And I may not have like, I'm not going to solve this problem right now. I'll let it work its way out. It's going to work its way out because it often works its way out over time. But that doesn't always, as a grown up, you can't always do that. There's sometimes you have to actually take the bull by the horns and make a decision. So I think if there is an Achilles heel, it's a little bit or a fatal flaw for
mm.
me. Sometimes it's a belief that if you just trust time, it'll work itself out.
So what would you do if you weren't in the performing arts?
Teach
Mm,
little ones. There's not a lot of men in those areas,
yeah.
but I could, kindergarten's hard, but I would teach, I would teach kindergarten. I would also take care of babies. Kids are good for the soul.
Why do you write? Like, did you always know you were going to write? How did it come into your life? Why do you do it?
In college, when I started coming to this, I was seeing a lot of really good theater. I was in New York and I was seeing like 150 shows a year, maybe more than that. And just coming slowly to that understanding that like you can use this as a tool
Mm,
to think about yourself and to figure out yourself and to figure out other people and to figure out just to get smarter about how this all works, meaning life.
yeah.
So I think it's that. I mean, like honestly, now I write because it's my job
Yeah.
and it's how I take care of myself. But I'm lucky that for the most part, the projects that I've been doing for most of my career also get to be projects that I care about, that I'm interested in.
Mm,
I wouldn't quite call it therapy, but it's probably does a similar kind of
mm,
thing that
hmm.
therapy does for some folks. It is like, oh, let me live in this space and grapple with stuff um, in a way that's uh, fruitful, and then hopefully also like if that can be my job, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's the learning aspect, right? The learning through the craft, learning through the delivery, but also learning about yourself. It's kind of a reciprocal thing that just continues to
Yeah,
grow, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So is there a project, or maybe it's not a creative project, maybe it's something completely off the wall, but something that, that sort of looms up here that you think, oh, maybe one day I'd really like to do that. Do you have anything like that?
The biggest thing that I want to do, and I have no idea if, when, how it happens, is I've been working in the New York City theater for it's almost 30 years now. And I've been working with um, some of the same actors for 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, and a lot of actors who I've never hired to be in a play because they're, for whatever reason, they aren't the right type for that play, or um, they weren't available when we were working on it. But they've helped me develop new plays. They read new things that I write. And what I would love to do is gather a big group of them and make something like specifically for them. And I just want to like get them in a room and say, like, what is it that you want to do? Like, what haven't you done before? How do we make a big epic story? But that takes a lot of time. And and those kinds of plays are very expensive to produce. I feel like you can produce them in the UK, but they're very hard to do here in the States. So someday down the road, I think we want to take that on. But got a lot of other boxes we need to check off first.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. If we were if we were working together, I'd be saying, "Boy, you're really fighting for your limitations, man. You're always telling me all the reasons why you can't do something."
Well,
No, I
it's
get it.
something that
I'm teasing you a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I think, and I think you're right on. It's something that's right on, and it's something that is just a matter. Again, it's a little bit of that, like, when is it going to happen? Because I think that we'll do it, and I want to be sort of like in a space for it. But yeah, totally, and totally. There's probably 15 projects that are just like, I could have done this if I didn't just tell myself that
yeah,
all the reasons why I couldn't.
yeah. And I would put forth that the one you just described to me is already happening.
It's 100%,
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
that's that thing too, is that any of these projects, I don't think I have any projects that I've wanted to do that have actually been like, no, these are
yeah,
finished. You're not
yeah,
doing
yeah.
them. The limitations are in the way. They're always like just sort of percolating, and
I love that.
some of them are definitely going to happen.
I love that. Hey, so what do you know will stay true about you no matter what happens? Just a light little question.
Nothing. Like, I think nothing. I can't like guarantee that.
Huh.
I think there were a lot of things that I thought I could guarantee when I was younger. Um, so I just as like a way of hedging my bets, like, I don't I'm not presumptuous enough to say I know what, how things are going to actually unfold. That said, I think the stuff that I care about, the stuff that I write about, is community. It's people being together, finding community, finding a space for themselves. I think that is something that's still going to stay true for me forever. Um, I think that the stuff that I was saying about family and kids, and they're all related to the same sort of stuff. That stuff feels really front of mind for me. Um, and I think I'm always going to default back to trying to write about stuff. I think I'm always going to default, even if I retire, or I'm not writing, or I move in to do something else. I think there's always going to be a pull to just sit back down. So at some point, just say, okay, we just sit back down, and like, there's a question that I can't quite wrap my head around. I got to create a character, or a few characters to help me figure out to figure out what I don't know about this thing. I
Mm,
think that's always going to stick around as like I don't know if coping mechanism is the right thing, but that's my practice. And I
yeah.
think that's going to stay the same.
So I'm hearing you're always going to remain curious,
I hope so. I
ask
really
questions.
hope so.
But it's interesting that you went to um, not identifying, which I love. You just kept yourself in that like open space saying, I'm not, I don't know. I don't know. But then you
Yeah.
actually did get a little more specific, but where you went was, and I just want to point this out, is how I don't know how things are going to unfold. And that's interesting because for me, from my perspective, the question was coming from what's not going to change about you, regardless
Yeah.
of what unfolds.
Yeah. And I think that's what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
I just to say that, a couple things to say that the so much has changed in the world, which but also just in terms of like what I don't know, like the small trappings, I guess, of what I thought was important to me and what I thought was going to be, has been less so
Yeah.
as I've gotten older. Um, and like I said, I do think that those things I write about and I think about and I organize my brain in the same ways that I did when I was younger, which is just like who are the people that you care about and how
Yep.
you care about them.
There you
So that
go.
part of it, I guess, is what's going to stick around, but you just don't know. Uh, and the world, the world, right? So the world right now. So who knows? But yeah, that's what I think is really the what feels important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the world can't change you. I mean, it
Right.
can change your
Well,
circumstances, but well,
yeah,
is the
yeah.
world going to suddenly make you not think connection is
I
important?
don't think so.
No, I don't
I
think
don't
so
think
either.
so.
I would call bullshit on that one, but anyways, okay. How do you want to be remembered?
Mm. All these come back to the same thing. I think the really important thing is I want to be a good father, good husband, good friend, good kid, good child to my parents. And then I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say that, like, I think, I want to be remembered for the writing.
Yep.
Um, and a curiosity within the writing. I think that, I'm very, very lucky that I think of the things that I've written, I think Chat Deity and Hell's Kitchen especially are like I've gotten very, very, very close to what I set out to do with
Mm,
each of those shows.
mm,
I think it's impossible to get to 100%, like just
yeah.
because like you have it in your mind and then there's a director in the mix and there's writers in the mix. There's actors in the mix and other people have different kinds of ideas and the process of creating is just it's something. The theater, we do it over and over and over again, so every night we try it again. So like that idea that like we may have gotten it one night, we may have gotten like a perfect distillation of what everything was, but it doesn't land that way every night. But on both of those shows we're so close to the overall picture that I wanted to create for myself. And I think you know 97, 98, 99% of the emotional heart of what we wanted to do on both of those shows. So I want to be, I think to be remembered um for that kind of success on those pieces feels really significant and important to me, tertiary to the other stuff. And I will say that that's a big difference between being 23 years old and being 47 years old now, is that at 23 all I wanted was that.
Yep.
And now that's, and maybe because I've had some of that success already, it doesn't feel quite so desperate. But it's definitely part of that, part of that, I don't know,
100%. Yeah.
legacy.
Yep. I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
that you get, that you've given your best expression for yourself and now you let it go like you will with your children, right? When your children
Yeah.
go,
Yeah, exactly.
you've given them everything they can. So I mean, there's no difference. And so you
Yeah.
just do the very best that you can. But I love that you're able to acknowledge that and feel good about it. I think that's fantastic. Um, all right. I'm gonna ask you what makes you, and I'm gonna say a word, and you say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Oh,
What?
is this like a lightning round? Is this going to be
Yeah,
like a
let's do it. Let's try it.
series of
You want to try it
questions?
like a lightning round? See what happens. Aha.
Sure.
What makes you hungry?
Lunchtime. I'm hungry. 10:30. 10:30 a.m. makes me hungry.
What makes you sad?
Oh, so much. I can't articulate what makes me sad.
It's okay.
I can't articulate what the thing is. Maybe I come back to that one. This is
Yeah,
not a lightning round at all.
it's okay. What inspires you? What inspires you?
What inspires me? People working together to accomplish something, to make something together.
What frustrates you?
Um, Technology.
What makes you laugh?
The first thing that came to mind is when little kids fall down and don't cry. They fall down and they're not hurt. That's one of the funniest things in the world.
Oh my God, that's great. What makes you angry?
Communication problems, especially me not being able to express,
Mm.
articulate what I'm actually trying to say.
And finally, what makes you grateful?
I'm so conscious of the fact that I don't deserve more than other people. And I'm so humbled by how many great things that I have access to. And I'm grateful that I have been lucky, blessed, whatever, to have the kind of life that I have.
Mm.
Not through um, actions of my own. I play a role in these things. I work, but it's not because of me that I have a hit show on Broadway or that I have, a home, a loving home, and a wife and kids and fam. Like I didn't earn the incredible parents that gave birth to me, that brought me into this world. I lucked into that. So I'm constantly grateful for all of the things that I've been able to find myself amongst in my life. And the gratitude takes the form of I don't know, not trying to earn it, but honor it and give respect to it and show up for it.
Mm. What are the top three things that happened so far today?
I had a meeting that got canceled. That was great. I reread a really good play. That was good. And I took my kid to school. I walked my kid to school and we had a nice conversation. And he was on time. He was really on time this morning, which doesn't always happen. I'll take that. That's a win.
That is a win. And what's something that you're looking forward to both today and in the future?
Teaching tonight. In the future, there's so much, but the most immediate thing that comes to mind is that on December 1st, Shoshana Bean is leaving our show. And I'm not looking forward to that. It's sad, but we're going to see the show that day. I'm going, my wife and kids and I are all going, and we're gonna spend that time with Shoshana, and it's gonna be pretty magical. She's pretty magical. She's amazing in the role. And again, it's the community is gonna get to be there. It's gonna be, I will cry 1,000%. And it's gonna be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it sure is. Chris, I so appreciate you taking the time to be in the moment with me today. Really. It's been such a pleasure.
This is my pleasure. It's a lot of fun.
Oh,
Yeah,
ditto.
thank you so much.
Such a joy. I've been speaking today with Christopher Diaz. I'm Lisa Hopkins. Thanks so much for listening. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. And remember to live in the moment. In music, stop time is that beautiful moment where the band is suspended in rhythmic unison, supporting the soloist to express their individuality. In the moment, I encourage you to take that time and create your own rhythm. Until next time, I'm Lisa Hopkins. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to dive deeper into cultivating a life of creative possibilities with my new book, The Places Where There Are Spaces. It's filled with personal stories and insights to help you embrace living in the moment. You can grab your copy by following the link in the show notes or wherever books are sold. Let's keep the conversation going and growing.